Who was the second best player for the Detroit Pistons last season? It was a heck of a conversation on social media. Let's bring it right here to the stage on Top Title Detroit. Let's go.
Perfect.
What's good? Welcome to Top Title Detroit. I am Eric Vincent, your host and Detroit Pistons beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Before we get into the episode, please help us grow the channel with a little bit of free support by please liking the video and subscribing to the channel as well. Doing our best to try to hit our goal by the end of the year of at least 500 subscribers by the end of 2025. I think we can get there, but please help out with the cause. Please tell a friend to lock in with us right here at Top Title Detroit. Let's get into the conversation. I had an off day at work today, so I was able to be a little active on social media. And shout out to my guys, Downtown Deuce and Everything King. They had an episode of their stream, I think it was yesterday or a couple days ago, where they talked about the NBA Finals, comparing a couple pieces from the OKC Thunder to the Detroit Pistons. And one of the biggest comparisons was Jalen Williams and his maturation with the Thunder and the maturation of Jaden Ivey with the Detroit Pistons. If you look at what Williams has done this year, he has basically turned himself into a hell of a star. All-star season, second team all-defense, if I'm not mistaken, been one of the most important pieces for the Thunder on their quest to the NBA championship. And based on the way they're playing, it's hard to rule out that he's been great this season for the Thunder. Now, in comparison to the Pistons, Deuce made a point where he believes that he thinks that Jaden Ivey can get to a point of development in being as impactful for the Pistons as Williams is for the Thunder, which I don't think is a crazy thing to say. I think, if you look at the way they play, both very hyper-athletic guys. They're one of the secondary creators for their teams. They're taking steps of growth defensively. Obviously, Williams is on a whole nother planet defensively compared to Jaden Ivey, but we've seen growth in their young careers thus far, being the point. So I agree with that. I think we could see down the line Jaden Ivey turn into that impactful kind of player for the Pistons, and the conversation kind of evolved a little bit further because there was a lot of pushback to that point. Because I'm hearing a lot of people say that Jaden Ivey is, I've heard people tell me in my Twitter today that Ivey is incapable of creating his own shot, not a playmaker for others, didn't make a lot of significant growth in his game. I just saw a whole lot of slander that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And in the conversation as it unfolded, as it kept going on, there were a lot of other names that were mentioned on who had more value and who were the better players for the Pistons. But the way I see it and the way I look at it, I think Jaden Ivey, even in a small sample size, was the second best player for the Detroit Pistons last season. I truly believe so. I think even when he was gone, we saw how much the Pistons needed him in the playoffs against the Knicks when they didn't have enough secondary creators. Even before the playoffs got there, we saw a lot of teams blitzing Cade Cunningham before half court, getting the ball out of his hands, coming off screen and rolls, getting blitzed immediately to get the ball out of his hands, and there weren't enough off-ball cutters or scorers that could take advantage of that. This is one of the big specialties of Jaden Ivey's game. And to me, based on the growth that he's made this season, I think it's an easy call that he was the best Piston last season next to Cade Cunningham. Now, granted, I will say there's an argument for other guys to be made. I think Tobias Harris has an argument. You can look at guys like Asar Thompson and say he might have an argument. I heard some people talk about Jalen Duren, saying he has the argument of being the second best player. I'm not mad at any of that. I understand the cases that they have. But the way I break it down and look at it based on the development and the growth that we've seen from Jaden Ivey, I think he's clear-cut and obviously the second best, and as of right now, to me, the second most important Piston on the roster. I feel like he gives the Pistons something that they don't have in that secondary creator. Even though I don't think he's great as a secondary creator yet, he showed this season that he is capable of being that. It wasn't consistent in a lot of stretches because there was a lot of things that were shaking up and a lot of things that were still lacking. Like, to an extent, Ivey was playing kind of out of position, definitely defensively, because Asar Thompson missed a lot of time due to his blood clots. So Ivey was forced to take on either the first or second best player against their opponents. And again, he's not really the best on-ball defender, even though we did see him progress as an off-ball defender, playing passing lanes, creating transition looks for the Pistons. He showed that he is capable of playing a high level of offense, a high level of defense when needed for the Detroit Pistons. Now, again, he shouldn't be relied on as one of their primary lockdown defenders. I think you already have guys like Asar Thompson. Last season, you had a brilliant defensive season from Tobias Harris. You had good defensive help from Cade Cunningham, who I think is an underrated defender. Tim Hardaway Jr., who had a lot of responsibility as a perimeter defender. Malik Beasley, Ron Holland stepped up a lot defensively. So based on that, and I think based on how the Pistons roster should be constructed, I don't think you should have to rely on Jaden Ivey being an elite or top line defender. You look at guys like Steph Curry, if you look at guys like Luka Doncic, like Trae Young, some of these guys aren't necessarily the best known defenders in the NBA, but they're able to do their roles defensively to keep the team moving. Like they have enough defensive help around them that they're not relied on to be those guys. Even when they're hunted out, like which honestly Jaden Ivey wasn't hunted much in, against his opponents, you could tell he was able to hold his own. I think in games like against the Hawks, where Cade Cunningham had the last second block and he had the left-handed hook shot to win the game early in the season, you saw Jaden Ivey matched up against Trae Young and he forced him to get the ball out of his hand. We've seen games like against the Sixers where Ivey was able to play passing lanes and get easy dunks in transition to help, turn the momentum for the Pistons. Like that's a part of his God-given ability as the electric player he is with his speed and with his athleticism. Now, granted, he is going to come back from his injury, so we're going to have to wait and see if he's back to 100% to being the guy that we saw last season. But the guy that we saw last season, I thought looked spectacular in a lot of different areas. And again, that's not to say that he's a perfect player. He's not a proven player already. There are areas that he can still grow and improve in. But based on what we saw and based on what the Pistons needed, which is secondary scoring and shooting, I don't think it's really close to say that based on the young core, maybe even Tobias Harris included, I think you can sit up there and say that Jaden Ivey was the second best player. Again, there's arguments to be made for other guys, but I think Ivey made a tremendous leap as a shooter, going up to 41% from three after shooting 33% last season. If I'm not mistaken, he was 45% from catching shoot looks for the Pistons. And he was able to create his own looks as well confidently with the ball in his hand in ISO situations. A lot of arguments I heard from the Pistons and other beat writers and media members were people saying that he is bad at still some areas that he needs improvement on. I understand that, but that's not the argument I'm making. You can be bad, but still show the ability to be capable of the areas that the Pistons need. For example, like I just said, he's not the best defender, but if he's playing passing lanes and showing that he can be capable to, create turnovers and play make defensively to get the Pistons to play their identity of basketball, which is defense into transition looks, that suits exactly what they need. He wasn't far on the best playmaker for the Pistons either. However, when Cade Cunningham was injured, he was able to create offense for himself, others, and generate game winners against the Toronto Raptors, wasn't he? He was able to play catch and shoot basketball with Cade on the field with Malik Beasley against the Sacramento Kings, where he knocked down a three to give the Pistons the lead and knocked down the and one free throw right after to help seal the victory. Like, I just don't like the arguments that I heard from a lot of people. People were saying things like, he doesn't create for others. He's a liability on defense. He didn't make any significant growth in his game. Like, that is just not reality. And it's not the argument I'm making either. The argument is not about, is Jaden Ivey good or bad at the areas that he needs to improve on? That's not the point at all. Did he show that he's capable of the areas that are needed of improvement? We already saw that with his jump shooting. And again, I think that's the biggest sign of it all. Nobody in the world thought that he would go from 33% to 41%, even in a 30-game sample size. Even if you don't think he would have lasted with that the entire season, nobody would have put money on to bet that Jaden Ivey would have shot 41% from three in a 30-game span, especially earlier in the season. It's harder to do it earlier in the season than keep it up in the second half when you're learning and getting acclimated to new pieces, a new system, a new coach. Like, it goes a long way to say that he was able to do that in that 30-game sample size. And he was scoring in other ways as well. It wasn't just his jump shot. We saw him score off ball with cuts to the basket. We saw him create his own shots in ISO situations, in late game situations. One of my favorite sets that they run for the Pistons is when they're trying to get easy buckets and they have a inbounder in the, like, around the midcourt area, and they bring Ivy basically from the other part of the court, and he comes to get the ball quick. Well, he's catching it downhill, blowing by his defender to get an easy layup. They did a lot of sets like those just to get easy baskets for the Pistons when they were down or trying to get easy buckets for themselves. Like, Ivy did a really good job of being that versatile creator for himself and for others, I believe. I know what the numbers say, and I know what the analytics may look like, but also he's shown the ability to be capable of that, even if he still needs growth. If you look at some other players like Jalen Duren, Duren is still limited in the abilities of growth that are needed most for the Pistons. He has not shown the ability to create his own shot at all. He has not shown the ability to consistently be an elite level defender, which would also require him to stay out of foul trouble as well, which was a big problem for Jalen Duren. I think his passing got really good towards the second half of the season, but the first half, he struggled a lot with that. If you ask Jalen Duren, he said it himself. He said in the closeout game against the Knicks, he said himself that he wasn't playing great in the first half of the season. He said he was playing kind of soft, that he really needed to step it up. And his defense was one of the big swing skills that was going to change a lot for the Pistons. Those swing skills were Jaden Ivey's jump shot, the defense of Jalen Duren, and any kind of offensive prowess from Ausar Thompson. I don't think we saw enough from Duren to kind of stamp that he's going to be, again, like the second best player for the team. He was limited to catching lobs from Cade. Like, he did a pretty good job in some sets of kind of isolating on his own, but that's still not his game. That's not what he's predicated on, and we didn't see a big enough leap to kind of stamp that he was that good enough to call him the second best player on the team. Now, great, he did some good things. His rebounding got back to an elite level on the offensive glass and the defensive glass. Again, being that elite level pick and roll threat with Cade Cunningham really did a lot for their half court offense. But outside of that, he still has a lot of growth that he needs to step up and, partake with himself. So for me, I can't really call him the second best Piston on the team. Again, I love JD. I'm a huge fan of his game, and I like to see him stick around as long as possible. But I personally would not say that he was the second best player on the team. Ausar Thompson, another popular name that people brought up a lot. And I can't say that right now. I can't confidently say or believe that he was the Pistons' second best player. First of all, a lot of people knock Jaden Ivey for a small sample size. I don't think Ausar has played in a big sample size yet in his entire career. I mean, he played 56 games this season because of the blood clots, and then 63 last season. That's still a lot of time missed. So if people are knocking Ivy for missing so much time, at the very least, we saw Ivy still play, 70 plus games his first two seasons, and he was doing that in roles that he wasn't used to. As a primary initiator in offense his rookie season, coming off the bench, for Monty Williams, and then coming in and out of the lineup, but still finding ways to be productive. Like, Ivy still found ways to impact the game, and Ausar does that too. But if you compare their games, Jaden Ivey doesn't have a flaw in his game that is as glaringly, obviously bad as Ausar Thompson's jump shot. Even Ivey's defense, it's not as bad as the guy who just shot 22% from three this season and 18% last season. I talked about it on the last episode. I remember watching Draymond Green watch Ausar Thompson catch the ball to shoot, and Draymond turned his back, not even looking at him as a threat. Nobody treats Jaden Ivey like that offensively. They crash out on him immediately to contest the shot. Ausar, if he's looking for a three, the defense looks at that as a win. And we talked about that with Isaiah Stewart as well. Those kind of possessions are blown possessions where he's airballing threes. He's not shooting confidently. He's looking to pass and get rid of the ball because he's not comfortable on the perimeter. Like, that's a big detriment to the team. Like, you at the very least, even if he's not making his shot, you want the defense to be able to come crash at the shooter so you can keep them off balance. So if Ausar catches the ball at the perimeter and a defender comes to charge him to try to contest the shot, he can maybe up fake and blow by him and maybe create a shot for somebody else or go get his own shot and a better look. But he doesn't do that, and he doesn't command that kind of attention. That's how bad of a shooter he is. That's how limited he has been offensively on the perimeter. Like, that's not a good look. I'm sorry. I like Asar's game a lot. I think he does have a very high ceiling. But again, his needs of improvement are a lot bigger than what we've seen from Jaden Ivey. Like, we luckily didn't see teams implement the hack Ausar mentality or game plan in the playoffs or the regular season. Like, they could have, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Ausar shot 64% from the free throw line this year, 59% last season. So Asar's game, again, if teams were to do this, this would cripple the Pistons tremendously. If they wanted to get Ausar off the floor, they could foul him like we did Mitch Robinson in the playoffs last season against the Knicks, and then force Ausar to shoot free throws like we've seen from Ben Wallace, like we've seen from Andre Drummond. Like, that is a notable thing that he's going to have to improve on. Like, I've seen a lot of people just say, regardless of what his deficiencies are, his defense is so elite, which it is, that you just have to forget about it and let him play through it. No, you don't. No, you do not. If teams elect to foul him and send him to the free throw line and he's splitting free throws or missing both, which he did quite often, that's going to hurt the Pistons moving forward. That hurts their ability to play in half-court sets and be productive. Like, you can't have that. You just can't have that. And there's nothing in Jaden Ivey's game that is attacked in that kind of way from his opposition. They look at him more as a threat than a liability. Turn on the film. It speaks for itself. They were able to blitz Cade Cunningham relentlessly because he was off the floor. And to be clear, a big point of emphasis to where Asar's game was that he's such a great ball handler. If he was such a great ball handler in a secondary role, you wouldn't have had to go get Dennis Schroeder. You wouldn't have had to go get him. You could have relied on whatever Ausar was giving you in that position, and he wasn't doing that consistent enough. We saw I can think of at least 3 times. I remember one vividly against the Denver Nuggets where Ausar had a wide open breakaway layup and he loses the ball out of bounds or misses the layup in transition. Like, Asar's got a lot of things that he needs to tighten up to me. Again, spectacular defender. I love the way he impacts the game on an offensive role. He's very good in, scoring situations of, moving without the ball, scoring from the dunker spot, dropping off second level passes to shooters on the outside or to dunks for Jalen Duren. He's very good at that, but he still has glaring holes in his game. I'm not confident enough to say that he's been their second best player thus far. Again, to me, I think the guy who has the biggest case is Tobias Harris. Tobias did a really good job of turning around the perception around his name, improved his game as a shooter towards the second half of the season, played defense spectacularly all year long. I think that, again, I say this all the time, this was the best season we've seen from Tobias Harris on a defensive level. And I think offensively as well, he did a really good job of adjusting his game from just being a standstill shooter to a guy that was posting up against smaller oppositions, finding ways to get to the hoop, trying to find ways to score in transition. He did a good job of finding ways to impact the game on both levels. Really good year rebounding as well for Tobias. So I can't confidently say guys like Ausar, I can't confidently say that guys like Ausar have already cemented themselves as the second best player for the Pistons. You can project and say he has the highest ceiling. I'm okay with that. But as of right now, as it stands, I personally can't say that he's the second best player for the Pistons. That's not what I saw this season. But I'm all ears and I'm willing to listen to you. Talk to me in the comment section. Let me know who you believe was the second best player for the Detroit Pistons last season. Who do you think it was? And tell me why. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you for being here with us. Before you go, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Lock in with me on social media as well at I am Eric Vincent. You can also stay tuned for my work as a beat reporter on clutchpoints.com. I'll be sure to be getting the best work out to you guys this offseason. It's going to be a wild one this year. Thank you all for tuning in again, and I'll see you again soon right here on Top Title Detroit. Peace.